I didn't go on that date expecting anything. Not chemistry, not fireworks, not a story I'd retell later. Mostly, I went because my therapist had said, low expectations aren't a bad thing, Oliver. They're just room. So I downloaded the app again, swiped without caring too much, and said yes to coffee on a Wednesday night like it was an errand. Nathan didn't look like someone who would change my life. That sounds harsh, but it's true. No dramatic jawline. No loud confidence. No performative charm. Just steady. He wore a navy jacket, clean sneakers, and had this way of standing still, like he wasn't trying to fill space. Hey, he said when he saw me, smiling softly. Not wide. Not rehearsed. Just enough. Hey, I answered, already planning my exit strategy in my head. One drink. 40 minutes. Polite hug. We ordered coffee and sat by the window. The CFA was half empty. Rain streaking down the glass. Traffic blurring into background noise. Silence settled between us, not awkward, just unclaimed. Usually, I rushed to fill moments like that. I hated pauses. They made me feel exposed. Nathan didn't rush. So, he said eventually, stirring his cup slowly. How's your week been? Not what do you do? Not what are you looking for? Just that. I shrugged. Busy. Kinda exhausting. You. Same, he said. But not in a bad way. That answer stuck with me. I didn't know why. We talked about small things. His job at a nonprofit. My half-burnout from freelance work. A shared dislike of voice notes. He listened in a way that wasn't intense, just present. No interrupting. No waiting for his turn. When I joked, he smiled like it mattered. At some point, I realized my shoulders had dropped. I wasn't monitoring myself. I wasn't wondering how I looked or sounded. I wasn't performing a version of myself I thought he'd like. I was just there. I'm bad at first dates, I admitted, surprising myself. He glanced up. Why? I overthink. I assume I'll disappoint someone eventually. Nathan nodded, like I'd said the most reasonable thing in the world. Yeah, I get that. No reassurance. No argument. Just understanding. The date stretched past the time I'd planned. Then past that. When the CA had started stacking chairs, we stood outside under the awning, rain still falling. Neither of us mentioned leaving. I don't usually feel calm around people, I said suddenly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He looked at me, really looked this time. Me neither. We didn't kiss. We didn't even hug for long. Just a brief, warm squeeze that felt grounding. Like a punctuation mark instead of a cliffhanger. Walking home, I kept waiting for the familiar post-date spiral. The replaying. The self-critique. It didn't come. What came instead was quiet. And the unsettling realization that nothing dramatic had happened, no spark, no rush, but something in me had shifted anyway. Like I'd been holding tension for years and finally set it down without noticing when. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and stood there for a moment longer than necessary. Not excited, not anxious, just different, and aware of it. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, which almost never happens. My phone was face down on the nightstand, exactly where I'd left it, and for a few seconds I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to locate the familiar weight in my chest. The tightness. The low-level dread that usually followed dates, good or bad. It wasn't there. Instead, there was this quiet awareness of my body in the bed. The hum of the city outside. My own breathing. It felt like waking up after a long flight and realizing your legs still work. I didn't check my phone right away. That alone felt new. When I finally did, there was a message from Nathan. Time-stamped 20 minutes earlier. Hope you slept well. No pressure at all, but I liked last night. No emoji. No over-explanation. Just that. I stared at it longer than necessary, noticing what wasn't happening. My pulse wasn't racing. My brain wasn't drafting 3 different responses and ranking them by risk. I just smiled. I did. I typed back. I liked it too. And then I put the phone down again. The days that followed were oddly light. Work was still work, emails, deadlines, the usual low-grade chaos, but I moved through it differently. I caught myself humming while making coffee, standing straighter, letting small things slide that normally would have dug under my skin. Nathan didn't text constantly. That was part of it, I think. When he did reach out, it was simple. How's your afternoon? Or saw this article and thought of you. It felt like an open door, not a tug on my sleeve. We met again a week later. Not a second date, exactly. More like a continuation. A walk through a park just before sunset, dogs pulling at their leashes, Kids shrieking somewhere near the playground. He brought coffee. I brought nothing. It didn't matter. We sat on a bench, shoulders not touching, watching the light shift through the trees. I usually try to impress people, I said, without looking at him. He tilted his head slightly. How so? By being interesting, or useful, or charming, or whatever I think they want. And me? He asked. I thought about it. With you, I didn't feel like I had to. He nodded, slow and thoughtful. That's good. There was something grounding about the way he accepted things. No inflation, no deflection, just letting words land where they landed. We talked about families. Not the dramatic stuff, just the shape of them. Habits, silences, the way certain expectations linger long after you've moved out. He told me about learning to be the calm one because someone had to be. I told him I'd learned to disappear when things got loud. Neither of us tried to fix the other. When he walked me home, we paused at my door. The moment stretched, familiar but uncharged. I could feel the possibility of a kiss, hovering there like a suggestion, not a demand. Can I see you again? He asked. Yeah, I said. I'd like that. He smiled, not bigger than before, just warmer, and leaned in. The kiss was unhurried, almost gentle, like we were confirming something we already knew. No spark, no rush, just contact, steady and real. After he left, I stood in my hallway for a while, keys still in my hand. I noticed how quiet my apartment felt and how okay that was. I wasn't waiting for my phone to light up. I wasn't bracing for doubt. I realized then that the change hadn't come from being chosen, or wanted, or even kissed. It came from sitting across from someone and feeling safe enough to stay exactly where I was. And that feeling followed me inside, settled into the corners of my life, and stayed. Not loudly, not urgently, just there. It didn't turn into anything dramatic. No moment where I realized I was in love. No night where everything tipped over all at once. Nathan just became part of my days in a way that felt almost unremarkable, and somehow, that's what made it matter. We started seeing each other without labeling it. Grocery runs on Sunday mornings. Sitting on my couch while some background show played, neither of us really watching. He'd scroll through articles, sometimes tilting his phone toward me. This reminded me of what you said, he'd mention casually, like it wasn't a big deal that he remembered. One night, without planning to, I told him something I usually kept tucked away. How I learned to stay quiet when things felt unstable. How being easy, agreeable, low maintenance felt safer than taking up space. I said it lightly, like an observation, but my body was already bracing for the shift. The moment where someone feels obligated to fix you. Nathan didn't rush in. He just nodded once. That makes sense. And something in me loosened. A month later, we took a short trip out of the city. Nothing romantic or curated. Just a small coastal town, gray skies, bad coffee, and too much wind. We walked along the water, sometimes talking, sometimes not. The silence never felt heavy. It felt earned. We sat on a low stone wall facing the ocean, jackets pulled tight against the cold. Without thinking, I leaned into him. My shoulder found his, natural and unforced. He adjusted slightly, not to pull me closer, not to stake a claim, just enough so I was comfortable. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said. And for once, I didn't mean I'm fine. I meant settled, present, in my body. That night, lying beside him in the dark, I realized I wasn't scanning the moment for danger. I wasn't wondering how to be better or quieter or more impressive. My thoughts slowed. My breathing matched his. I fell asleep before he did something I never managed around other people. The changes showed up in places I didn't expect. I stopped apologizing for pauses in conversation. I let silences stretch without trying to entertain them. At work, I started setting small boundaries. Saying no without explaining myself to death. It felt like my nervous system had recalibrated, tuned to something steadier. One evening, months in, we cooked dinner at my place. Pasta. Soft music. Nothing special. At one point, Nathan rested his hand on the counter near mine, not touching, just close enough to be intentional. You're different, he said quietly. I smiled, watching the steam rise from the pot. I feel different. Good different. Yeah, I said. Quieter. In a good way. He didn't respond right away. Just reached out and squeezed my shoulder once, grounding. Simple, and went back to stirring the sauce. Later, after he left, I stood at the sink doing dishes, water running, apartment quiet. I thought about how long I'd believed intensity was proof. How I mistook anxiety for connection and tension for depth. What changed me wasn't passion or drama. It was calm. It was space. It was being allowed to stay exactly who I was. And that stayed with me. Not loudly. Not urgently. Just enough to matter. I didn't notice the shift right away. That was the strange part. There was no moment where I woke up and thought, something's different now. It crept in quietly, disguised as routine, as ease. Nathan started leaving a toothbrush at my place without announcing it. One morning, I realized his shoes were by the door, lined up next to mine, like they'd always belonged there. Another night, I caught myself reaching for my phone to tell him something insignificant in overheard conversation. A stupid meme. The way the sky looked just before sunset and not questioning why I wanted to share it with him specifically. It wasn't urgency. It was orientation. Like my internal compass had adjusted without asking permission. One evening, we sat on the floor of my living room, backs against the couch, eating takeout straight from the containers. The lights were off except for a lamp in the corner. I was talking about my parents, about how quiet dinners used to be, how I learned early that being easy made things smoother. I'd told versions of this story before, always with a layer of distance. This time, my voice didn't flatten it out. I think I got really good at disappearing, I said. Not physically, just emotionally. Nathan didn't look at me right away. He stayed facing forward, knees drawn up, like he was choosing his words carefully. You don't disappear with me, he said. It wasn't reassurance. It wasn't a promise. It was an observation. I felt it in my chest first. That subtle tightening before something real lands. I know, I said, and the fact that I didn't have to explain how I knew felt important. There were moments when my old instincts flared up, when he took longer than usual to reply, or when plans stayed loose instead of locked in. I noticed them, those reflexes, but they didn't hijack me the way they used to. I could feel the anxiety rise and then settle, like a wave that didn't need to crash to prove it existed. Nathan didn't demand closeness. He offered consistency, and slowly, my body learned the difference. Weeks passed, then months. The season shifted without ceremony. One night, as we lay side by side in bed, he reached for my hand, not dramatically, not urgently, just enough to lace his fingers through mine. We stayed like that, breathing in sync, the city humming outside. I thought about how many times I'd mistaken intensity for safety, how often I'd chased the feeling of being needed instead of the feeling of being known. I used to think change had to hurt, I said quietly, staring at the ceiling. Like you had to lose something to become someone else. Nathan squeezed my hand once. Sometimes you just get to rest into it. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was profound, but because it felt true. Later, after he fell asleep, I lay awake for a while, listening to the even rhythm of his breathing. My thoughts weren't racing. They weren't scanning the future for exits or threats. They were just present. I realized then that I hadn't gone on that first date hoping to be changed. I'd gone expecting nothing at all. And somehow, that was exactly what made room for everything that followed. Not a transformation that cracked me open. Not a passion that knocked the wind out of me. But a steady unfolding. A quiet reorientation. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind you only notice once you're already living inside it. There was a moment, months in, when I realized I'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. Nothing symbolic about it. I was running late, keys misplaced, phone buzzing with emails I didn't want to read. The kind of morning that usually sent me spiraling. When I finally stepped outside, flustered and irritated, Nathan was leaning against the building across the street, coffee in one hand. You didn't say you were coming by, I said, breathless. I know, he replied. I had time. Thought I'd walk with you. No grand gesture. No explanation. Just presence. We walked in silence for a block, then two. My irritation drained away without either of us naming it. He handed me the coffee like it was the most obvious thing in the world. That's when it hit me. I wasn't bracing anymore. I wasn't waiting for proof that this would disappear, or twist, or cost me something. My body had learned a new default. Later that week, I met an old friend for drinks. Someone who knew me from before, from the years when I was sharper, louder, always chasing something just out of reach. Halfway through the second drink, he laughed and said, "You're different." I felt my stomach tighten, reflexively. Different how? He shrugged. Calmer. Like you're not trying so hard. On the way home, his words echoed. Not accusing. Not nostalgic. Just factual. I thought about all the versions of myself I'd rehearsed over the years. The one who stayed interesting so he wouldn't be left. The one who kept things light so no one would look too closely. The one who mistook tension for intimacy because calm felt unfamiliar. Nathan never asked me to unlearn those things. He just didn't require them. That night, I told him about the comment. We were sitting on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, neither of us in a hurry. How do you feel about it? He asked. I considered it. Relieved. A little scared. Mostly relieved. He nodded. That tracks. I laughed, leaning into him. His arm came around me easily, like it always had. Time kept moving, quietly. Seasons changed. Our routines shifted and reshaped themselves around each other without negotiation. There were disagreements, sure. Misunderstandings. Days when we were tired or distant or unsure. But none of it felt like a threat to the ground beneath us. One evening, standing at my window, city lights blinking on one by one, I caught my reflection in the glass. I looked the same. Same face. Same body. But something behind my eyes had softened. I thought back to that first date, the way I'd gone in empty-handed, prepared to leave unchanged. How I believed that if something mattered, it would announce itself loudly. Demand attention. Take up all the air in the room. What I hadn't expected was this. A steadiness that didn't need proving. A connection that didn't spike my heart rate to feel real. A version of myself that didn't need to be edited to be kept. Nathan was in the other room, humming absent-mindedly while doing dishes. The sound drifted toward me, ordinary and grounding. I didn't feel transformed. I felt aligned. And for the first time, that felt like enough. The first real test didn't come with drama. It came with distance. Nathan had to travel for work for 2 weeks. Nothing exotic, just another city, another routine, but the space it created was unfamiliar. Old versions of me would have filled it with noise. Constant updates. Overanalysis. The quiet fear that absence always meant erosion. This time, it didn't. We texted when it felt natural. A photo of his hotel window at sunrise. A voice memo from me while I was walking home. Traffic humming behind my words. No accounting. No scorekeeping. When hours passed without contact, I noticed the reflex to worry and then watched it dissolve on its own. One night, halfway through his trip, I cooked dinner just for myself. I ate slowly. Washed the dishes right after. The apartment felt empty. Yes, but not abandoned. There was a difference, and I could finally feel it in my body. I realized I trusted the quiet now. When he came back, I didn't rush to the door. I didn't rehearse how to greet him. He let himself in with the spare key we'd never formally discussed but had somehow agreed upon. We stood there for a second, just looking at each other. He looked tired, grounded, familiar. Hey, he said. Hey, I answered. The hug came naturally slow, full, unhurried. Not relief, not desperation. Just recognition. Later, sitting on the floor with our backs against the couch, he told me about the trip. The dull meetings. The one good meal. The long evenings where nothing much happened. I listened without trying to extract meaning or reassurance. I missed you, he said at one point, like a passing thought. I felt it land, steady and warm. I missed you too. No spike. No fear. Just truth. That night, after he fell asleep, I stayed awake a little longer. Not because my mind was racing, but because it was quiet enough to hear myself clearly. I thought about how much effort I used to spend preparing for loss. How I'd believed love needed tension to stay awake. How calm once felt like the prelude to leaving. Now, calm felt like staying. I didn't know what this would become. I didn't need to. For the first time, I wasn't building an ending in my head just to survive the middle. I turned toward him, careful not to wake him, and rested my hand lightly against his back. He shifted slightly, closer, without opening his eyes. That was enough. Not certainty. Not forever. Just this quiet confidence in where I was. And who I was becoming while standing still. It wasn't perfect. I think that's important to say. There were days when my old instincts came back sharp and uninvited. Moments when Nathan went quiet after a long day, or when plans shifted last minute, and my chest reacted before my mind could catch up. That familiar tightening. The urge to pull back first. To protect myself by becoming smaller. One evening, it slipped out before I filtered it. Are you pulling away? I asked, trying to sound casual and failing. We were sitting at my kitchen table, plates pushed aside, the room half lit. Nathan looked up slowly, surprised but not defensive. No, he said. Then, after a pause, are you feeling like I am? I nodded. Just once. He didn't reassure me with promises. He didn't rush to fix it. He moved his chair a little closer, close enough that our knees touched. "Thanks for telling me," he said. "I've just been tired." Not distant. That was it. No escalation. No spiral. The feeling passed not because it was argued away, but because it was allowed to exist without becoming a threat. Something in me learned from that. Weeks later, I caught myself doing something unfamiliar, planning forward without anxiety attached, mentioning a concert months out, talking about a trip like it was a shared possibility, not a test, not a demand, just a thought placed gently between us. "Yeah," Nathan said easily. "That could be nice." Nice. The word used to scare me. It felt like settling, like losing edge. Now it felt like space. One night, lying on the couch with my head against his chest, I listened to his heartbeat steady, unremarkable, real. I realized I wasn't bracing for it to stop syncing with mine. I wasn't memorizing the moment in case I needed it later. I was just in it. That's when it really hit me. I wasn't calmer because nothing could go wrong. I was calmer because I trusted myself to stay present even if it did. On the anniversary of that first date, something I only realized because my phone surfaced the old Savanka photo. I walked past the same window where we'd sat. Rain streaking the glass again. Different season, same quiet hum of traffic. I didn't feel sentimental. I felt grounded. That night, back at my place, Nathan was cooking, sleeves rolled up, humming softly like he always did. I watched him for a second longer than necessary. "You know," I said, leaning against the counter, "I didn't go on that date expecting anything." He smiled, not looking up. "That tracks. I think that's why it worked," I said. "I wasn't trying to become someone else." He turned then, meeting my eyes. "You didn't." I felt it settle in my chest, not like a revelation, but like recognition. I hadn't been changed by passion. I hadn't been reshaped by intensity. I'd been met with calm and learned how to keep it. And somehow, that changed everything. I didn't notice when it stopped feeling new. That's how I knew it was real. Not because the excitement faded, but because the question shifted. I wasn't asking, "Where is this going?" anymore. I was asking smaller things. What to cook for dinner? Whether we should walk or take the bus? If the window should stay open tonight? One afternoon, months after that first date, we stood in a hardware store arguing gently about lampshades. Not flirting, not posturing, just disagreeing in that calm, ordinary way couples do when neither outcome actually matters. "You always pick the warmer light," he said. "And you always want everything to look like a dentist's office," I replied. He smiled. "You're dramatic. Only because you're emotionally repressed." We both laughed, standing there between aisles of things meant to last. That thought landed quietly. Things meant to last. The realization didn't scare me. That night, we sat on the balcony with cheap wine, city sounds rising up around us. I rested my feet on his lap. He traced slow, absent lines along my ankle, not trying to say anything with it, just touching because he could. "I used to think calm meant boring," I said suddenly. He tilted his head. "What does it mean now?" I thought about it. About who I was before him. Before that first coffee. About how tightly I used to grip everything. "It means I'm not fighting myself," I said. "I'm not trying to earn space." He nodded. "You don't have to hear." The words didn't feel like a promise. They felt like a statement of fact. Later, lying in bed, I realized I wasn't cataloging this moment for later. I wasn't afraid of losing it. I trusted that even if things changed as things always do, I wouldn't disappear again. That was the real shift. Weeks after that, I walked past the Sivakura one last time. Different people at the window. Same rain. Same soft blur of traffic beyond the glass. I stopped for a moment, watching strangers lean into conversations that might change them or might not. I smiled not because I was sentimental, but because I understood something I hadn't before. I didn't walk into that date hoping to be chosen. I didn't leave chasing passion or intensity. I left with something quieter, something sturdier, the ability to stay. I turned away from the window and headed home, where Nathan was probably humming in the kitchen, where the light would be warm, where my nervous system finally knew how to rest. I hadn't walked out a different person because someone lit me on fire. I walked out different because someone stood next to me and didn't make me burn to be seen. And that, it turned out, was everything.